Hello guys, today I'm going to show you how to create a cel shading post-process. For those who are fan of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Genshin Impact, this episode will be helpful, I hope. So, if you talk about cel shading, first of all we need to discuss some basic concepts. Cel shading has rough edges and the color palette is divided by particular amount of cells or bands. And as you can notice, even if the model has details, the overall look is quite flat. So, for instance, if you want to create such visual look for PBR models, the models that actually use roughness, metalness, normal maps, this will be quite difficult and the result will actually look quite ugly. So, in case you want to recreate cel shading post-process or tune shading, you will need to remove normal maps, roughness, metalness, any kind of reflective textures to achieve the proper visual feedback. I'll show you later how the model looks if it has some reflective materials and how it looks if it doesn't have any reflective materials. So there is a big difference, and please follow my instructions. Also, I want to say that this tutorial, this episode, is actually the breakthrough of the common ways how to create the cel shading post-process. We won't be creating it by using two different meshes, one with the basic normal and other with inverted normals. And I will also show you how to create some stylized effects for narrative adventure games. For instance, we will create some kind of noir style game, visual feedback with some red, black and white colors, and I'll show you some tips, or I'll tell you some tips so you can play around with the computations that we will achieve to actually achieve the proper result that you want. Also, we talk a little bit about an outline, because outline on edges is also the key element to have the full result of tune or cel shader post-process. So, let's begin. Well, right before we start, I'd like to show you how the scene looks without any post-process. But my post-process of cel shader right now is applied to the character's camera. So, if I launch the game, you will see that I have all black color. That's because our post-process here doesn't have any input. So to see the final render result with all shadings and computations applied, we just need to plug in post-process input 0 into the emissive color. And if I launch the game now, you can see that my scene is actually rendered pretty much realistic. Now, I'd like to show you how this scene looks if the shell shader is applied. But with a little adjustment. Right in the preview you can see that shell shader works pretty much fine, and if I launch the game you can notice that the color grading has changed, but the overall visual look of the model actually looks pretty much ugly. You can see that some shading is applied, but it doesn't look cartoon. And that's the reason I told you before. It's all about reflections and normal maps applied to our models. And the more complex object is, less tuned it will look. So if you want to have pretty grass, foliage, etc., you need to maybe simplify it a little bit. And actually, I think you can go with maybe ambient occlusion map and just albedo or diffuse map. You actually don't need any specular, roughness or metalness to achieve the tune look. So, to quickly change our scene so it will look as shell shaded, we just need to adjust settings inside the materials of our meshes. So first of all, I'll go with my night. Right here, I just switch off normal, roughness and metalness. I'll leave only base color and ambient occlusion map. Now if I apply changes, let's wait for shader to compile. As you can see, the model actually, the shader is being recalculated. I'll stop it for a moment just to wait. So guys, shader compilation is done, and now let me show you how the model looks. From this side it looks better, and if we try to turn around our model and look at it, you can see that now it's actually cel shaded. It looks more cartoonish, and we can go along with it. Just need to adjust some settings. So maybe I think I'll go with another direction of my character, and inside my post-process material instance I'll make some more changes. I think I'll go with this for the shadows. Now, as for the highlight zone, more white, so the difference between highlighted and shadowed zone looks better, in my opinion. We can actually tweak the threshold of how much shadow we want on our model. I'll go with something like 0.65. Now let's see how the model changed. And yep, that looks better. We only lack of one element, and it's the outline. So I'll add an outline here. Just to show you how it looks. Need to add lerp, then the color of our outline, and put it, I think, here, yep, and here. Now you can notice that I have the compilation error. It's due to we are lerping with the color which has only 3 channels. So we need to use mask, I think here, and use only 3 channels. Here, and I think maybe here. Yep. Now, as you can see from the preview, we have self-shaded material with outline on it. Press apply, and let's wait for shaders to compile. Now, let's launch our game and see the result. Don't actually look on the background. As you can see, the whole scene is now cel-shaded, and to fix this we just need to use the custom depth buffer. But even with this artifact, you can see that the model now looks pretty much toonish. I'll just make a little change here, and maybe this element. Now let's take a quick look. Yep, some fancy stuff. So as you can see, wolf actually looks not quite good. That's because of the fur it has and the normal map. So you can see these artifacts. It actually doesn't look flat. So to fix the problem with our wolf also, let's select it. Now, well, here it is. I'll open it to see what material it uses. One material here and one material here. So I'll just switch off these elements: metallic, specular, roughness, normal, and apply both shaders. Here and here. And just in a moment we will see that the shader is recalculated, and when I launch the game you will see the difference. So now if you take a look at our wolf, it looks better. Even with this outline of fur. Actually, to change this, you need to switch off the opacity mask from the map we have here. Just a quick look one more time. And now it looks as it's intended to be. Fully tuned style. You can play around with the tint colors of the shaded zone and highlighted zone, but in my case the achieved result is what I was looking for. So now let's talk about how to actually create this effect, and I'll show you later how to fix the problems with the depth buffer, and also, as I told you before, to achieve some other narrative game visual styles. So the common way, actually main common way how to achieve the tune post-process or cell shaded post-process is to compare the world normal direction with the surface direction. If they are equal, we have the highlighted zone. Whether they are opposite, they all have opposite direction, it means we have the shadowed zone. And if they are perpendicular, it means we have the edge between highlighted and shadowed zone. So if we use the dot product between these two elements, we actually won't receive any shadow if the gap between our sun and the model will be filled with another object. So to fix this problem, we need to actually extract the light buffer. When we will have the gradient from white to black, and if we use it for our cell shading as the mask, when we use an object to cover our cell shaded object, it will receive the shadow. To receive the light buffer, we need to divide the post-process input, which has all shading computations inside, and divide it by our diffuse color. Diffuse color is basically color without any shading inside. So then we need to saturate it to have the normalized gradient from 0 to 1, so we can compare it with our threshold. If we are higher than our threshold, it means we are using the highlighted zone. If it's not, we use our shadowed zone. Let me demonstrate how the lighting buffer looks like. It's something like this. And now, if I hold my crate, it's can't to see clearly, but the shadow on his chest is actually moving. So goes for our table. So basically when we use this, we'll actually receive the shadows casted on the cel shaded objects. Now, let's talk how to manipulate our highlighted and our shadowed zone. We can actually fill it with the colors, but they will be just raw colors without any details, so your diffuse texture won't be visible. So to fix this, we use diffuse color. Next, we use some kind of buffer to actually make the highlighted zone more brighter, to affect on our highlighted zone here. For this I use post-process input with the shading information inside, multiplied by the certain scalar parameter and added to the diffuse color. Also I use multiply and vector 4 attribute, so I can have some tint affected on the diffuse texture of my cel shaded object. I also need to use make float for material function, because without it, if I use RGB channel, you will see I'll receive the compilation error. You can actually go with another operation. You can use append vector, use RGB, use 0 or 1 as a scalar attribute, and apply it to our multiply. So the result will be the same. It's up to you to decide which overall look of your material you want to have. And let me demonstrate you what will I achieve if I just use the raw color. So here and here. So when I press apply, and when I go to our scene, if I launch the game, my objects just will be colored with two colors, like this. This can be used in different situations, whether you need to have some special effects. So it's also some sort of stylizing. But let's continue with our episode. Next, what we need to do here is to withdraw the effect of the cel shaded on our sky. For this, we divide the scene depth by the high value, because our sky actually covers the full scene. So the units here is 100,000 units, and we check whether the result of the division is higher than 1, because scene depth is measured between 0 and 1. So if it's true, we just use our post-process input, our final render on our sky. If it's false, we'll use our cel shader. So let me demonstrate what will we achieve if we just plug in the result of cel shaded without subtracting the sky. Well, actually our sky changed its gradient. It's not bad. Let's quickly check whether I have shading model, blendable location set to before translucency. Let's check whether it changed when I used to bphoton mapping. And yeah, one more thing. If we use bphoton mapping, it means that all transparent elements, glass, water, particle effects, everything that has transparency, will actually be affected with our post-process. If you don't want this, you should go to before translucency. Well, I guess because I don't have some fancy skybox here, it's just volumetric clouds. I don't see any artifacts. But in case you have some outline effect, maybe I should rearrange the order of these nodes. So instead of using this, just quick rearrangements, I'll use this here with our outline and go like this. Now let's see if we have effects on our sky. Well, definitely not. Maybe it's because I've missed something. Well, nevertheless, let's continue. Actually, I remember having the old sky with textures in version 4.24, when we actually don't have any volumetric clouds. So post-process actually affected it. And yeah, if you take a closer look here, you have seen that the gradient, actually the sky color is blue one, and when we launch, the color is changed. So please subtract it. Subtract sky from using cel shaded in case you don't need it. Just quick adjustments to show that it's actually have effect. So let's go with light blend with some high values, also with the dark one. And for the tint, let's go with something crazy, green one. So right now you can see sky is affected. Everything is affected. So, as I said, to fix this problem, we need to actually withdraw our sky from cel shading process, like this. Now you can see that ground is cel shaded, some sort of, but the sky isn't affected at all. So let's continue. Take a closer look. So extract lightning, use it as a mask, effect on light, highlighted zone, effect on shadow zone. Then this is the outline material function. In case you haven't seen my tutorial on how to create the outline and fill post-process, you can check it in the playlist. I'll just show you the basic idea how it works. Just let's wait a little bit. I have some sort of lag. Basically, the idea is to create the buffer between scene depths and the custom depths by actually subtracting the scene depths with the pixel offset on the custom depths on 4 dimensions or 4 directions: top, bottom, left and right. So the difference between these two buffers is actually our outline. Just a quick look. Then we actually need to add the result of these subtractions to achieve the outline of the perimeter of around our object. Then we use divide to have the depth fall off, so you won't achieve the result when you have the outline inside your model, in case you don't need it. If you want only outline around on the edges of your model. Then we use clamp and apps, so we withdraw with the negative values because they can actually produce some artifacts. And for the offset pixel material function here, as you can see, just manipulating on the scene texture size. So just multiplying the size of the textile and using it to the texture coordinate, we actually have some shift on each side around our object, on top, bottom, left and right. So everything is easy. Back to our shader. So here we have our outline effect added to our cell shader. Next, as I said, we are subtracting or withdrawing our sky from the cell shader, and here is the tricky part about the custom depth. So we check whether scene depth equals our custom depth. If it's so, not equals, we are comparing them. So if there are difference and scene depth is higher than the custom depth, we use our cell shader. So the model we are looking at is actually closer to us, to our camera. If it's not, we use just post-process input. So we have won't any effect. Now let's plug it inside the emissive color of our post-process and see that we have compilation error. That's because this operation here doesn't have mask. And right now, if I press apply and launch the game, you will see that post-process will gun on those elements that doesn't have the custom depth activated. So, as you can see, right now the model actually looks without any cell shading. But we have effects on my bottles. That's because they use custom depths. Also, this ugly wolf. Bah. So, to add our models, so they will be affected by the cell shader, just select them, or if it's blueprint, select mesh inside your blueprint, then search for the render tab, or just text, fill in text using the word custom. And here you can see render custom depth path. If you check it, you also will see that you have custom depth stencil value. In case you want to have different post-process mixed inside and they won't affect on each other, so they will render separately, you can go with actually selecting different stencil values, but this technique is a little bit tricky and I'll show you a little bit later in this tutorial, so please stay. I will just now show you that right now everything is without the post-process, but we have the post-process here on our models that are rendered in custom depths. Now let's quickly change the values to our default values. To see, yep, that everything looks the same. So let's continue. Yet another fancy way of how to create shell shader I found some time ago on YouTube. As you can see, I'll just quickly demonstrate the logic inside it, but won't tell you everything. You can Google it yourself. So basically the idea is the same. You use the light buffer, but instead of colorizing the white and black areas, we are actually lerping between our post-process and diffuse color. So whether we need the highlighted area to be fully use fully post-process output, so basically the lighting information inside, so it will look a little bit, it will have some volume inside it, or if it look very flat without any shading information, so diffuse color. And here we have the variation that we are actually colorizing the shadow area. So instead of using the color here, we can go with actually the texture with world align inside it, so our shadow can have some fancy stuff inside it, some opacity masks, so it won't look just the solid color, it will have some geometry inside, and we can plug it inside our material and see the result right in the moment. So please close a look. Extracting, then lerping between just input and diffuse color, then multiply the result on the color attribute and lerp it between without color defect and lerp it with our mask. So if you press apply, let me see. Actually, let's change the shadow to look more darker. Something like this. And also, yep, that's much better. So from this side it looks good, from this angle also. And as for this side, yes, actually pretty much good effect. some tune wolf, but now it looks like a dog. So this is when we have the diffuse color only, and if we go with the alpha for 0, it means we will have post-process. Now our model looks a little bit different. So as you can see, outline, then shadow is some sort of cel shaded, and we have some fancy shading effect on our model. Glossy wolf. So that's another way, and I'll show you right in a minute the third way how to achieve the tune effect. And one more fancy way to achieve tune style. Actually, it was demonstrated on the live stream on Epic's YouTube channel some time ago, and I think I need to show it, because with it you can also achieve pretty nice results. Basically what they do is they are creating bands using seal or floor operators. Seal actually rounds up to the next integer. For instance, if you have the floor as 1.6, it will return 2, and floor works in opposite. So if it has 1.6, it will return 1. So basically when using seal you will receive the brighter image, when using floor you will receive the darker image. And with the operation by multiplying our result that we have from the post-process input, we actually don't need color, because with this operation we are creating the mask, the gradient from white to black. So when we use multiply and divide by the number of bands using seal or floor, we actually creating the bands. The gradient with very sharp edges from, as I said, white to black. Next we need to mask the red channel, so the result will actually lead from white to black, not from the gradient will be a little bit lower. Next we multiply the results on the certain scalar, so to actually have some emissive on it to empower our mask, and we need to saturate it so the value won't go outside of the range from 0 to 1, and we multiply our mask on the diffuse color from our scene texture. Then we actually plug in into the lerp with our outline, and the whole process begins from the beginning. So let me demonstrate how it will look. Right now I have the bands number of 20. So if I launch the game, you'll see that from this side it's a little bit dark one, and when we start to rotate, you can see that's freaking awesome result we have. Very tuned model. And you can see that the shadows, the lights and dark areas are actually playing with us. And if you take a look at our dog, yeah, it looks like we are playing in the game something like Walking Dead, I think. So, as you can see, result is pretty much decent. If we make bands with lower values, for instance 8, you'll see that mask is actually different. So less number in bands, leads to black color. The high values leads to actually normal diffuse amount. Normal diffuse look. For instance, if I go with, I guess, 256, you will see that actually it's the diffuse texture itself without any tune effects. So I found the value of between 16 and 24 the most that I like, and intensity to make the mask more visible between 3 and 6. So maybe let's go with 3 and 16 and I'll show you the result. And yep, that's how it looks right now. This one and this little doggy. Maybe create more bands, as I said, 24 and maybe 6 the intensity. One more time launch our game. And yep, you see it on your own. So let me show you. Actually, this is all for the tune-out cell shader effect. Now, the next part of this video, it will be short. I'll tell you about manipulating this mask to create some stylized effects for some pretty freaking ideas. So, if we actually, I guess, we even go without all of these nodes. For instance, if we take the mask here, just plug in the result we have here, you can see that the scene actually will look like some sort of noir comics book, like this. Well, you can use it in any ways you want. You can actually apply some more colors inside. So just from this, maybe we can go with, just to show you the idea. And instead of using diffuse color, we can plug it inside here and see that we will have some freaking comics book characters. Something like this. And we can also make some adjustments to actually make our scene black and white. Let me quickly think what we need to do. Here we are withdrawing our cloud, but instead of using the post process, we can go with the black. Area. So just like this. And we don't need to use custom depth buffer now. So the scene will be pretty awesome. Well, I guess we need to add some more details. Maybe we need to have everything dark. The main scene should be covered with the white color from the light, and our models should be the red one. So to achieve this result, need to make some arrangements. And here comes the stencil. So guys, I made a little pause and made quick rearrangements. So just to show you the idea how to use stencils, so you can achieve the results that I'll show you right in a minute. But before this, I need to tell you that to make the stencil work, you need to go to the project settings of the rendering tab. In the rendering tab, sorry, it's a bit tired. That's all because I actually do make quest system as I promised earlier, but I'm a little bit out of the deadlines, so it's pretty much complete, but just a few days, guys, just a few days. So, rendering tab, here, we need to scroll down and look for custom. Let's actually search for it here. Well, engine rendering, custom then stencil pass. We need to check enabled with stencil. So with it, attribute on, we can use stencils. Now, from what you saw previously, I made a little scene and the post process to show how to work with stencils, so you can achieve this kind of scene. So as you can see, everything is dark. We are actually in the middle where we have the light source up. Here we have our night in red, our booth also in red, also outline. Actually our fireplace is blue one, and everything is just black and white. So you can use it to create scenes for very interesting effects. Maybe to attract something, or if you do something fancy. So, to achieve this, as you can see, I use the same mask with the red color. Also I use lerp with the outline here. Next, another lerp with the same mask here, but you can see that I have another scalers. So outside of this effect, my scene will be controlled with another controls, so I can have different intensity on our effects. And as the alpha, I use this operation. It's actually look at scene, whether it finds the stencil one, it withdraw all the scene and renders the one count with stencil. It actually has stencil. If it doesn't see stencil, it just goes with this scene. Now, if I just put inside this operation, you will see that actually my scene, let's wait for shaders to compile. As you can see, the setup of the scene is a little bit different from what you saw. I just set the time of the day to be at night, added the light point here, and make sure that your assets that you need to be rendered in the proper stencil, in the rendering options here, have the proper stencil value. So as you can see, right from the material, if you have stencil 2, they will be rendered using this computations. If not, this one. So now you can see red, and white. Nice result. And to work with more than one stencil, as you saw, my fireplace was covered with blue color. I just use another lerp, the result from the previous lerp, here with these operations. Next, the result that I want to have on my object that is covered with another stencil. Here is the same operation, like this, but with the blue color. You can go with any kind of operations here. This is just to show you the idea. And as you can see, here was the stencil mask with the number of 2, here we have the number of 3. So, if I take my fireplace, select its static mesh, here in the rendering option you can see that I have stencil 3. So, just because of this, when I launch the game, I'm sorry, I didn't press apply here. You can see that I have 3 different colors. You may notice that some of the objects on this side are actually work as transparent. That's because we don't have any custom depth filtering. So, to make sure that your object is rendered behind our table, for instance, we need to make some changes. So, let's do them. So, to make it work, so our stencils will be rendered in the proper Z order, and they won't be transparent and visible through other objects, we need to make the depth filtering. For this, we use if nodes with thin depths and custom depths here. So if you want something to be ordered in a proper way, if actually thin depth is higher than the custom depth, we go with the results of our stencil computations. It means that the object is closer to us than the object with the custom depth. If it's false, we just go with the result we want to have instead of having objects be transparent. In my case, I use the overall post-process for the whole scene, which I use here with lerping with my stencils. So when I press apply, take a quick look. When I launch the game, now everything works fine and there is no artifacts at all. Everything actually renders in the proper Z order, just like this. Well guys, also I need to tell how to add the post-process inside this scene, so the effect will actually fire. In case you want to achieve different effects on different levels, just need to look for post-process volume inside your level, then look for post-process materials, it's under rendering feature tab, press plus button, then select Asset Reference, and here add your post-process. Well, if you want to have the persistent same post-process over all your game, do the same, but in your player character's actor. You just need to select the camera, and here do the same. Under post-process, search for rendering features, expand post-process materials, and, as you can see, add an array element. So guys, that's it. That's the end of the episode. I hope you understand the idea behind how to use the masks so you can achieve fancy effects. I hope the episode will or was helpful for you. Please leave your feedback, subscribe if you like what I am doing, and see you next time with the quest system. Bye!